You'd think saving lives would count for something, but in my case, it only made me a bigger target. My name is Dr. Nathan Keller, and I'm 47 years old. For the last 2 decades, I've worked as a general surgeon in a city hospital in Milwaukee. Not a celebrity doctor, not the head of surgery, just someone who showed up, stayed late, did the job right, and didn't complain. I wasn't chasing fame, just results. I thought that would be enough. But hospitals aren't temples of healing anymore. They're businesses, cold, calculated, and political. And the day I forgot that was the day I let my guard down. It started the same way most days do. A triple shift, back-to-back procedures, and a vending machine dinner eaten in a supply closet between emergency calls. By 11 p.m., I'd been on my feet for 18 hours. 3 successful surgeries, 2 patient consultations, 1 heated conversation with a new intern who thought TikTok videos were a valid way to learn anatomy. I wasn't in the mood for drama, but it found me anyway. I had just finished charting post-op notes for a hernia repair when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sharon, one of our senior nurses. "You need to come to room 614, now." No emojis, no context. Just that. And trust me, when someone like Sharon sends a message like that, you don't waste time. I headed straight for 614, which was on the other side of the surgical wing. Inside the room, I found Mrs. Almeida, one of my post-op patients, and 2 administrators standing next to her bed. Sharon was already there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "Nate," she said without looking at me, "they're saying you operated on the wrong site." I blinked. "What?" Mrs. Almeida looked scared, confused. She reached for my hand the moment she saw me. "Dr. Keller, you told me the surgery went well. You said I'd feel better." I gently placed my hand on hers. "You will feel better. You're healing, and the operation was exactly what you needed." One of the administrators, a guy in a tailored suit I'd seen once or twice, cleared his throat. "We're investigating a possible site error. The patient's chart indicates a left side hernia. The operation was performed on the right." My blood went cold. The ultrasound confirmed a right side inguinal hernia. I reviewed it myself. Sharon pulled the imaging. She can verify. Sharon nodded sharply. "That's right. The paperwork had a clerical error. The imaging was clear." But the suit didn't flinch. "We'll need to pull the full documentation. In the meantime, Dr. Keller, we're placing you on administrative leave pending investigation." I stared at him. Leave? For doing my job? The next morning, I was told to clear out my locker. Security watched while I packed my things like I was some kind of criminal. No goodbyes, no thanks, no appeals, just silence. I sat in my car for over an hour afterward, unable to move. I'd seen this before, how the hospital handled risk. Someone makes a mistake, the system panics, and the nearest scapegoat gets thrown under the bus. Facts be damned. But I never thought it would be me. I'd operated on over 3,000 patients in my career. My complication rate was one of the lowest in the region. My patient reviews were stellar, but none of that mattered now. I wasn't a person. I was a liability. For the next few days, I kept expecting someone to call. A colleague, a supervisor, anyone, just to say, "We're reviewing it, hang in there." But no one did. Not even Dr. Raines, the head of surgery, the guy I'd covered for when his wife was in chemo. The same guy who used to say, "If I'm ever under the knife, I want Nathan Keller holding the scalpel." He ghosted me too. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just numb, confused, trying to breathe through it. But then I got a voicemail from a former patient. She'd heard I'd been suspended for malpractice. That word, malpractice, hit me like a punch to the chest. Someone was leaking misinformation, and whoever it was, they weren't just trying to suspend me. They wanted to end me. I reached out to Sharon privately. She was one of the few people I still trusted. We met at a coffee shop on a quiet Thursday morning, both looking over our shoulders like we were in some kind of spy movie. "I looked into it," she said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Inside were copies of the original imaging files, time-stamped chart notes, and Sharon's own documentation showing the chart correction before the surgery. "This proves it wasn't a mistake," she said. "But someone altered the electronic records after the fact. The corrected chart isn't in the system anymore." "Deleted?" I asked. "Scrubbed. Someone with admin access wiped it." I stared at the folder. This wasn't negligence. This was sabotage. Sharon wasn't the emotional type, but even she looked shaken. "This isn't just about you," she said. "If they're willing to falsify records, what else have they been hiding? How many doctors have they done this to?" Her words hung in the air like a blade. I took the folder home, locked it in my desk drawer, and sat in the dark for a long time. I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I was thinking about every patient I had ever helped, every 3 a.m. emergency, every kid I'd stitched up, every elderly man who thanked me for giving him just a few more good years. And now, all of it could vanish under a single lie. The hospital's investigation dragged on for weeks. I was told not to contact patients, not to speak to staff, not to set foot in the building. They were isolating me, keeping me quiet. At first, I followed the rules. I didn't want to give them ammunition. But when I learned that Dr. Raines had filled my position with an out-of-town hire, some young hotshot with a glossy LinkedIn profile and zero field experience, I knew I was being replaced, not reviewed. And that changed everything. I started digging. Not just into my own case, but into every disciplinary action the hospital had taken in the past 5 years. It wasn't easy. Most of it wasn't public. But I still had friends in admin, people who didn't like what was happening either. One of them, a records clerk named Luis, sent me a spreadsheet late one night. It was titled Non-Voluntary Leaves and Quiet Terminations, 2019 to 2024. There were 18 names, and all but 3 were over the age of 45. Surgeons, anesthesiologists, emergency physicians, veterans of the system. I called Luis. "Why didn't I know about any of this?" He lowered his voice. "Because they keep it quiet. They push people out without lawsuits or media. It's cheaper, faster. Most people just take the severance and disappear. And the younger doctors? They're cheaper, easier to control. They don't question policy. They play nice." I closed my eyes. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was a pattern. A week later, Sharon called again. Her voice was tense. "They're moving fast. There's talk about revoking your credentials." That was the final blow. Revoking my license meant I wouldn't just lose my job. I'd lose my entire career. 2 decades of training, education, sacrifice, gone. And for what? A lie on a chart? I couldn't sit still anymore. So I called a lawyer. His name was Marcus Riley, mid-50s, former malpractice litigator turned whistleblower defense. Sharp, focused, and, most importantly, angry for the right reasons. After reviewing my files, he leaned back in his chair. "This is surgical fraud," he said. "Tampering with medical records is a felony. And if the hospital's legal team is smart, they'll settle before this ever sees daylight." I raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll settle?" Not at first, but they will, once they realize what you're holding. He pointed to the manila folder. But you can't just threaten them with evidence. You need leverage, a witness, proof that this is systemic. That's when I remembered Dr. Song. She'd been a brilliant trauma surgeon, worked in the ER for 15 years. Then one day she was just gone. No goodbye, no send-off. People said she'd burned out. But what if that wasn't the whole story? I found her 2 days later, teaching anatomy at a local community college. When I showed up at the back of her classroom, she froze for a second, then smiled faintly and waved me in. We talked afterward over tea in the faculty lounge. I was wondering when someone would finally come asking, she said. What happened? She sighed. They told me I was being reviewed for performance issues, something about documentation errors. I fought it, but they said if I pushed back, they'd report me to the board. So, you resigned? I didn't have a choice. I couldn't afford a legal battle, and I had 2 kids in school. Do you still have the paperwork? She nodded. And emails. From HR, from Rains. My heart thudded. She had proof. I gave Marcus everything. The imaging reports, the scrubbed chart copies, Dr. Song's emails. He spent a week building the case before drafting a letter to the hospital's legal department. It was formal but direct. My client, Doctor. Nathan Keller has reason to believe his administrative leave is the result of falsified documentation and age-based discrimination. We request immediate reinstatement and a full audit of recent disciplinary actions involving physicians over 45. We didn't expect a friendly reply. We got silence. Then, 5 days later, a cease and desist letter. They accused me of attempting to access confidential hospital data and harassing staff. It was pure intimidation. Marcus smiled. Good. That means they're scared. But the damage wasn't done yet. A week after the cease and desist, I received a notification from the state medical board. An anonymous complaint had been filed, accusing me of gross negligence, patient endangerment, and ethical misconduct. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a career hit anymore. They were trying to erase me from medicine, permanently. I called Marcus. He listened, then said calmly, "We need to go public." Public? Media, investigative journalists, whistleblower protection, the whole 9 yards. They're hoping you'll fold quietly. Let's show them what happens when you don't. I hesitated. This could destroy my reputation, even if I was right. But if I stayed silent, they'd win. And I couldn't let that happen. Not just for me, but for every doctor they'd pushed out, every patient they'd put at risk. 2 weeks later, I sat down for an interview with Maggie Henson, a local reporter known for her work on medical ethics. We met in her office. No cameras, just a recorder and a long list of questions. She was sharp, thorough, skeptical at first. But when I showed her the documentation, the real documentation, she went silent for almost a full minute. They altered this? She finally asked. Yes, and they tried to cover it up by erasing the corrected version. She exhaled. Jesus. I nodded. They don't care who they hurt, as long as the numbers look good. She looked me in the eye. Let's tell your story. The article came out 4 days later. Front page of the Milwaukee Weekly. Whistleblower doctor alleges fraud, retaliation at major city hospital. It was everywhere by noon, picked up by local TV, shared across medical forums. Within 48 hours, it hit national news. I thought I'd be terrified, but I wasn't. Because for the first time in months, I was no longer hiding. They'd tried to erase me quietly. Now, the spotlight was on them. The backlash was instant. Patients started coming forward, former nurses too. Even a retired anesthesiologist wrote an open letter online backing my claims. The hospital issued a canned PR response. We take these allegations seriously and are committed to the highest standards of care and ethics. But behind the scenes, panic was spreading. Sharon told me staff meetings were now held daily. HR was scrambling to audit files. Doctors were whispering in hallways. And Rains? He went dark. No public statements, no internal emails. The man who once called me the best hands in the building couldn't even say my name out loud anymore. Three days later, Marcus got a call from their legal team. They wanted a meeting, not a trial, not a formal mediation, just a meeting. That told us everything. They were bleeding. We met in a private conference room at a neutral law office. 6 people on their side, just me and Marcus on ours. I wore a suit, clean shave, calm face, but inside I was vibrating, not from fear, from clarity. For months I'd lived in doubt, questioning my memory, my decisions, my worth. But now, I had documents, witnesses, the truth, and they had damage control. Their lead counsel, a woman named Hartley, opened with practiced sincerity. "We want to acknowledge, Doctor, Keller's years of service," she said, "and we regret that internal miscommunications led to this unfortunate misunderstanding." Misunderstanding. That word was a knife. Marcus didn't flinch. "We're here to discuss full reinstatement, financial compensation, and a written statement clearing Dr. Keller of all wrongdoing. Publicly." Hartley didn't blink. "You're asking a lot. You deleted medical records, threatened a physician, and filed a false complaint with the state board," Marcus replied. "We're being generous." Silence. Then she said the word we were waiting for. Settlement. They made their first offer that afternoon, a 6-figure payout, a neutral resignation, an NDA. Marcus laughed. "They think you're here for a check," he said. "I'm not." "Good, because now we ask for what really matters." Over the next week, we countered with our terms. Immediate reinstatement, or public acknowledgement of wrongdoing. A formal apology from the hospital board. Internal investigation into HR practices and Rains's conduct. Withdrawal of the board complaint. And no gag order. Ever. They stalled. They deflected. But the media pressure kept building. And finally, after 2 more weeks of silence, they folded. I got a call from Marcus at 9:12 a.m. on a Monday. "They've agreed." "To what?" "All of it." I sat down slowly. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I didn't quite believe it. After all they'd done, the lies, the smear campaign, the erasure, they finally admitted the truth. But this wasn't about victory. It was about validation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't incompetent. And I wasn't alone. The hospital published a public apology. They withdrew the state board complaint. They offered me my position back. Same title, same salary. But I didn't take it. Not because I was bitter, but because I'd already outgrown that place. They wanted me back to restore their image. But I didn't want to be a prop in someone else's redemption arc. I'd been burned once. I wouldn't go back for more. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I started a clinic of my own, smaller, local, focused on trauma recovery and surgical aftercare. It wasn't flashy. No marble lobby, no wing named after donors. But it was mine. And it was honest. Sharon joined me 3 months later. Luis helped set up the billing systems. Even Dr. Song came by twice a week to consult. It wasn't just a clinic. It was a rebellion. A quiet one. Built on trust, not image. And the patients? They came. Not just because I was back, but because they'd seen what happened. They knew I hadn't walked away from medicine. Medicine had tried to walk away from me. But I held on. Not out of pride, out of principle. Because at the end of the day, I didn't become a doctor to climb ranks or pad resumes. I did it for the people who walked through the door scared, bleeding, or broken, and just want someone to care, someone who'll listen, someone who won't betray them for a statistic, someone like me. 1 year after the article, Maggie Henson did a follow-up story. Same photo, same headline. But this time, the subheading read, "He lost everything and built something better." She asked me if I had any regrets. I said no, because if the worst thing that ever happened to me gave me the chance to build something I believed in, then maybe it wasn't the worst thing after all. I never planned to become a symbol. But when people came to the clinic, they didn't just bring x-rays and insurance cards. They brought stories. A nurse from a rural hospital whose contract was terminated after she reported a miscounted surgical sponge. A respiratory therapist who was written up for refusing to discharge a patient too early. A young intern who said, "I didn't know doctors could fight back." That last one stuck with me, because for a long time, I didn't think we could either. 6 months into running the clinic, I was invited to speak at a medical ethics conference in Chicago. I almost declined. Public speaking was never my thing. I wasn't a podium guy. I was a scalpel and stitch kind of man. But Marcus encouraged me to go. "Tell the truth," he said. "Let them hear what the textbooks don't say." So, I went. I stood on stage in front of 300 people, residents, specialists, hospital administrators, and I told them the whole story, not just about the falsified chart, but about the fear, the silence, the way good people vanish from systems that claim to protect them. I saw heads nodding, people taking notes. One man in the front row wiped his eyes behind his glasses. It wasn't applause that mattered. It was recognition. Afterward, a woman approached me in the hallway, late 40s, sharp eyes, introduced herself as a hospital board member from Boston. "You're not alone," she said, "but most doctors don't know where to start." I nodded. Neither did I. "Would you help others who want to speak out?" I didn't answer right away, because saying yes meant more than lending advice. It meant choosing to stay in the light, where the consequences live too. But I remembered that intern, and I said, "Yes, I will." That's how the Keller Foundation started. Not because I needed another title, but because doctors needed a place to land when everything else fell out from under them. We partnered with whistleblower lawyers, ethics consultants, burnout, recovery programs. We didn't make headlines every week, but word spread, quietly, powerfully. And sometimes that's how change starts, not with fire, but with persistence. One afternoon, about 1.5 years after the first article, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It simply said, "I was one of the people who voted to suspend you. I didn't speak up when I should have. I'm sorry, you were right. Keep going." No name. No signature. Just that. And it meant more than they'll ever know, because acknowledgement, even whispered, still matters. I still perform surgery twice a week. The room's smaller now. The team is leaner. The equipment's older. But I've never felt more in control of my craft. There's no fear when I sign a chart. No hesitation when I speak to a patient. No second guessing when I walk through my own door. I don't look over my shoulder anymore. And I sleep better at night. Every now and then, a reporter will reach out. Some want to do a podcast. Others want to turn the story into a screenplay. I usually decline. Not because I'm hiding, but because I already got what I needed. Not fame, not money, truth, and the quiet comfort of knowing I didn't break. Hospitals will always have politics. Systems will always try to silence those who speak up. But that doesn't mean we have to stop speaking. Some truths are inconvenient. Others are expensive. But all of them are worth protecting. Because behind every medical file is a human life. And behind every whistleblower, there's a moment where they had to choose between staying silent or standing up. I stood up, and I'm still standing.